Okay, Jim Stricker, Air Force, and I was stationed with the 366 Field Maintenance Squadron in Da Nang, and this was from July of 1969 to July of 1970.
Great. And whereabouts from Wyoming are you from?
I'm from Torrington.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Mr. Stricker, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a couple of your favorite memories.
The one that sticks out the most, we were all sitting around the shop one day and having a shop party, and the guys that weren't working were drinking beer. The guys that were working were drinking coffee. And we had one gentleman, he's in his 40s, and he's as tall as I am, maybe a little bit taller, and everybody called him Big Daddy. But he had been in the Air Force, regular Air Force, and got out as a staff sergeant. And he went into the Air Force Reserve and was a master sergeant. Well, his wife came down with cancer, his mother-in-law got sick, and he was losing everything. He had 1 week before he was too old to re-enlist. So he went ahead and re-enlisted and came in as a buck sergeant. This is only half the stripes that he had before. A month later, the North Koreans took to Pueblo, and they activated his unit. But he stayed with it, and we was having this party, and a mortar attack. Charlie threw in a bunch of mortars. Well, when the first one went off, everybody hit the deck. He hits the deck, jumps up, grabs his backside, and starts yelling and screaming, "Where's my Purple Heart?" And he starts yelling for his Purple Heart. He had been wounded. He wanted his Purple Heart. Well, it only took a couple of seconds for everybody else to realize what had happened. The guy sitting next to him was working, and he had a brand new, fresh cup of coffee. And when that mortar went off, he went like this. Sheldon's back pants was wet.
With hot coffee, not hot blood.
And our squadron commander, our shift officer was a lieutenant. He was laughing so hard he couldn't hardly talk. First sergeant was sitting next to him. He says, "Sarge, we don't give out Purple Hearts for wounds like that." But the rest of my time in Vietnam was pretty uneventful. We had a bunch of mortar attacks and rocket attacks.
So you were there during the Tet Offensive. That's when the Pueblo was there.
No, I was there at Tet of 70.
Okay, okay.
And we had quite a few rockets coming in, but a lot of them hit the Army and the Marine base and Da Nang itself.
Mm-hmm.
We only had one rocket attack that hit. It took out the barracks right next to mine. And my roommate was sitting at a desk writing home that night. And when we'd heard, I was working grave shift, and we heard that one of the barracks had been hit. But when we got off work at 7 o'clock that morning, the barracks that had been hit, they were already starting to fix it. And I went up to my cubicle, and I was going to grab my camera. Well, right over where my roommate was sitting was an alarm clock hanging out the screen, and he wasn't hit. But our lockers in both our bunks were full of holes.
Someone was looking out.
Yeah.
Good luck.
And we lost one staff sergeant in that attack. And he only had 8 days left, and he was going back home to his wife.
Yep, luck's fickle.
Mm-hmm. Real fickle. We had two gentlemen were across the street that night talking, and there was a forklift. They were leaning up against the forklift. That rocket hit on the other side of them and never touched one of them. they both had to get out because they both lost their hearing.
Mm-hmm.
But neither one of them was hit with shrapnel or anything.
Man.
How often were you mortared and rocketed, you suppose?
We had 79 rocket attacks and 31 mortar.
In the span of a year?
Oh, yeah, full year.
Yard.
The worst part of it is they had a whistle that went off during the rocket attack. But working out there by the flight line, you couldn't hear the whistle. So they had little lights. And a bunch of us have been stationed up in Japan. And we all got together and went back to Yokota Air Base for R&R. And a friend of mine and I were in the base credit union. We was checking on our accounts. And a new whistle went off. Matt jumped over the counter, knocked this gal out of her chair, hit the floor, rolled underneath her desk. I hit the floor and rolled over underneath the table in the corner and knocked an officer off his feet. I didn't even want to see who in the heck it was. And he was laying on the floor and he rolled over and looked at me and said, "Sarge, we're on your side. You can get up now." But like I said, that
Takes a while to get over that, doesn't it?
oh yeah,
Have you gotten over it completely?
pretty much so, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Like I said, it wasn't all that eventful. It's not like these guys that were out in the boonies that got shot at all the time.
Yeah.
Our shop chief was an E6, and his cousin was a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps. Well, every once in a while, he'd come in with an armed guard in a Jeep. And we'd go out and grab one of the external fuel tanks off the F4 that had collapsed in flight or had been shot up. We'd hook it on the back of his Jeep, and they'd take it out in the boonies and punch holes in it and use it for showers. And the armed guard was there because they had a case of steaks. So we were trading Uncle Sam's fuel tanks for steaks.
That works, doesn't it?
It worked for us. And we'd take the fuel tanks would come in from stateside in a big canister. And they had this styrofoam that all the way put it in so they wouldn't be bouncing as they were bringing it over. We'd take this styrofoam and we'd run a sealant bead around it, slap it together, and we'd get it up about that high. And then we'd make a wooden bottom and seal that on, and then we'd make a lid with a rope for a handle, and we'd put an air chuck in the middle. We'd fill this full of beer, put a tarp over top of it, take it out to the flight line, find an liquid oxygen tank, hit it with 8 seconds of liquid oxygen, and we had ice cold beer. So I mean,
Good stuff.
Vietnam
What you
was
have to do to survive, right?
Right?
Vietnam was rough.
Yeah.
That's
That's
some
a lot of
ingenuity,
tricks.
though.
Well,
Well, that's great.
you make the most of what you're doing.
That's
You do.
exactly right.
You do. Well, Jim, thanks for sharing your stories. We're
Well,
going to
thank
get
you.
back on our time schedule, but you know, if you want to, we're doing longer stories. We're working with the Casper Star Tribune, and we're scheduling to go out to the communities and talk to veterans, and we'll sit down for a
Yeah.
couple hours. If you got photographs or you want to tell your whole story, we can set that up at a later date. So.
2 weeks ago, all my pictures
Mm-hmm.
were in
Slides, weren't they?
Slides.
Yeah.
I spent 4 nights till 3:30 in the morning. We went and got a scanner, scanned them all. Then we went down to Scottsbluff and ran them off with pictures. But there's pictures there that we've got 8 to 10 copies of each one.
Okay. Well, I talked to your wife about that in the memorabilia room, so we'll take a look at those.
Yeah.
Because they're in there now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good.
And 9 o'clock last night, I found my South Vietnamese flag that I'd.
Oh boy.
The South Vietnamese Air Force Major gave it to me.
That'd be neat. That's the yellow and orange, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be neat to see. Did you bring that up too?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
look forward to seeing that.
Kathy took it down to the lady down there, and she was going to hang it up on the wall.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
She did it.
a lot of guys are going to be mad about it. A lot of guys
Well,
are
we'll
going to
see
be
what
happy.
happens. Yeah.
But that's the reason why we were all over there.
Yeah.
Was
yeah.
to
We
protect
were
that
helping
flag.
those folks. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
That's true. All right. Well, Jim, that was a pleasure talking to you.
well, thank you.
And we will.